Murder, aggravated battery, possession of a firearm by a felon. But, you know, so some of these people, as you said, already facing life sentences. I wonder, as people are caught, what changes for them? Are they moved to a different facility?
They might be moved to a different facility. If they've crossed state lines, they could be put in a federal prison because that's a federal crime when you cross state lines. So there is some certainly a possibility, if not an expectation, that they would be placed in a more maximum security type facility. Because as the sheriff pointed out, these escapees were in a minimum security part of the jail, even despite, I should say, despite the severity of the charges against at least half of them.
Well, let's go back to what you said.
There's going to be a lot of explaining to do. You heard Attorney General Liz Murrill say, you know, it's going to take time, but everybody's going to want to dig and get to the bottom of all of this. And the big question is why? Why? At every step of the way, why was this the way it was? Why were things not better? And the sheriff has a ready answer that, look, I've been trying to get the money to fix these things. We were aware of these things. We talked about these things, and we didn't get the funds. So you know, some of this is going to fall on the city council, the state legislature, or whoever. Why weren't funds made available to fix these things?
But you say when situations like this happen, all of a sudden those funds free up. And just, I mean,
government typically responds to a crisis, not to a warning.
Right. All right, and well, we certainly do have a crisis. Sheriff Susan Hudson said a little bit earlier, the investigation, and we talked about this a little bit, the investigation into this being an inside job, who helped on the inside, who helped on the outside. There have been previous instances within the Orleans Parish Jail of former employees who also found themselves behind bars, not for work, but being arrested for assisting inmates in doing things like delivering drugs, people who have who've committed fraud in the past as well. What's the probability of this being help from the inside or the outside?
Well,
or could this just
I don't
be
need
what
to
we see?
speculate. The sheriff herself and her top aide, her top deputy, who's in charge of the jail, both said. One of them used the term inside job.
Right.
The deputy said, the deputy chief, I think his title is, but he said, we're looking at this as an inside job, and the sheriff herself said, and this is a direct quote, we're going to investigate our own. You know, so there seems to be a high level of confidence by Sheriff Hudson and by Chief Malik that this was an inside job. They wouldn't be saying this publicly if they didn't firmly believe it, or even possibly already have some evidence of it. And clearly there was evidence of help from the outside by being able to use some pretty sophisticated or heavy tools to loosen up a fixture.
Yeah, because how do you even get it? You know,
exactly.
that's a good question there. When something like this happens, is there always, I always wonder about the fallout and the sort of reform that happens after this investigation is done. Do we see a mass exodus of people that work from inside the jail, or do we see some sort of reform happening in the way that they handle prisoners, the way that they run the sheriff's office? Like, what do we do here?
Well, it depends on how long it takes. Remember, we have an election for sheriff in less than 5 months.
Right.
So this thing could spill over into the next term, whether it's the incumbent sheriff who returns or a new sheriff who comes in. That's up to the voters.
Yeah.
At that point. But how long it takes, I don't know. I don't want to speculate. It's going to take months rather than weeks.
Yes, it definitely.
That's for sure.
Yeah.